my name is Lynda and I'm the brand ambassador for Needle Creations. Today I'm going to be working up Hook the Gnome, one of our little crochet kits, and I think Hook is such a cute, fun little project. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's inside of our crochet kit. You're going to find everything that you need to work up this project. Our 5 yarn colors, and then the crochet hook and the instructions, the yarn needle, and you will also need a pair of scissors so that you can cut your ends of yarn. Also inside your kit are easy to follow instructions. We do recommend that you have a skill level of intermediate to work this kit up. If not, we do encourage you to practice first just so that it doesn't become overwhelming to you. Before you begin, you should definitely read these instructions over. We do recommend you use our crochet hook because this size crochet hook will ensure that you have enough yarn to work through the entirety of the kit and you don't run out of yarn. This is, of course, your crochet hook. So if you look at our crochet hook, you'll see the hook that's going to insert into the stitch that leads into the throat. And then you'll see the shaft, which is where your stitches will be made, and then the thumb rest. And the handle, that's just where your fingers are going to curl around. Most people hold their crochet hook one of 2 ways, as though they're holding a knife or as though they're holding a fork at dinner. So you're going to want to practice and see which hold is more comfortable for you. In regards to tensioning your yarn, people do a couple of different things. For me personally, I wrap the yarn around my finger twice, and that's how I tension. Some people only wrap once. Some people may weave the yarn through their fingers. It just really depends on what's the most comfortable for you for a nice consistent tension. You are going to see information on here for a gauge swatch. I do encourage you to work up this gauge swatch before you begin so that you end up with the appropriate sized final product and you don't run out of yarn. And make sure that you're familiar with all of the abbreviations, including the color abbreviations for the yarn, and all of the stitches abbreviations. We do have diagrams listed down here below so that you can take a look at those. If you need a refresher on how to complete any of the stitches, we also have a video on the Fabric Editions YouTube channel. Okay, so I'm going to start by working up the body, but all of my pieces start the same way, and that's with a slip knot, and then I'm going to chain 2. You are then going to count back to the second chain from your hook. So you are going to count 1 and 2, and then you'll work 6 single crochets. Insert your hook into the second chain. You yarn over and pull up a loop, and then you yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. That is your first single crochet. And then you go right back into that same chain, and you're going to do this a total of 6 times. This is the way you start every piece of the gnome except for the pigtails. Those you're going to do a little bit differently, and we will discuss that once we put everything together. At this point, count your stitches. Now the loop on your hook does not count. So looking at my hook, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And since I have done 6, what I'm going to do now is show you how I slip to join. Insert my hook into my very first single crochet. I'm then going to yarn over, pull up a loop, and then I'm going to slip that loop under the loop that was on my hook to do a slip stitch. Now you want to be careful because when you look preliminarily, it looks like there's 7 stitches right now, but this last stitch, the one that's closest to my hook at this point, that's my slip stitch. I am not going to crochet into my slip stitch. I am now ready to start the second round. I'm going to chain 1 to bring my yarn up to height, and then I'm going to put 2 single crochets in each one of these 6 stitches, and I'm going to increase in round 2 up to 12 stitches. Anytime you are told to increase in the pattern, you're going to increase by placing 2 single crochets in the stitch from the round below. You'll see I'm not using a stitch marker. As you work past the second and third rounds where the slip stitches are, it becomes really obvious just looking at the material. But if you are a newer crocheter, I definitely encourage you to use a stitch marker to mark your first stitch of the next round, and that'll make it very easy for you to know exactly where you are in your round. Now that I'm back here at my slip stitch, again, I'm being careful not to work into that slip stitch. I'm going to slip into my very first single crochet from the round below. And at this point, you're just going to want to continue on following the pattern to work up the body. So I'm now up to round 15 of the body, and this is the first decrease round. So what that means is that we are going to be decreasing stitches to make there be fewer stitches in this round. So the first thing we're going to need to do is chain 1 and then single crochet 7 times. And then the stitch after our 7 single crochets is going to be the first single crochet 2 together, which is how we're going to decrease. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish 7 single crochets, and then I will show you how to do the single crochet 2 together. So I am completing my 7th single crochet, and I'm just going to go and count and make sure. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and now I'm ready to do a single crochet 2 together. So the way that we do this is I insert my hook, I yarn over and draw up a loop, and then I insert my hook into the next stitch, yarn over and draw up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops of my hook, and that's going to decrease those 2 stitches down into 1 stitch. Now I'm going to single crochet 7 more and then decrease again. So I am now ready to do another decrease. Insert my hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then I'm going to insert my hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a second loop, and then I'm going to yarn over again and pull through all 3 loops on my hook. That is going to decrease 2 stitches down to 1 stitch. I will continue working up the body, decreasing when it tells me to and single crocheting when it tells me to, and follow the pattern to complete the body through round 26. So I am currently working on my gnome hat. I do want to point out that I have quite the yarn mess going on back here because I'm currently carrying my colors in the inside of the hat. This will make it very easy for me to work up the different stripes as the hat progresses. And you can see here I've completed most of round 7 and I'm ready to switch to the white color in round 8. So I'm going to show you how I do this color change. You're going to want to work to the stitch before the last stitch of the round. And now I'm going to start my last stitch with the yarn that I'm currently working with, which in this case is the gray. So I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. And if I were doing a regular single crochet, I would yarn over at this point and pull through. But what I'm going to do instead, because this is a color change, is I'm going to finish this single crochet with my next color, which in this case is the white yarn. So I'm going to yarn over the white yarn and pull through those 2 loops on my hook. And then I can just give the yarn ends a little tug and it will tighten those loops down and tighten the loop on my hook down. I'm now going to use the white yarn to slip stitch this row closed, and then I will chain 1. And now I'm ready to begin round 8 with the white yarn. And I'm going to keep working with the white yarn until it calls for another color change. And then I will change to whatever one of the 3 remaining colors it tells me to, using that exact same method. So I'm going to show you how to do this, but then I'm going to tighten this up off camera. It's really a lot easier to braid this when you have this end secured down, but I don't right now. If you do not know how to do a 3-stranded braid, you take the strands from the outside and you move them over the middle strand so they become the new middle strand, and you alternate the right and the left outside strand. So for example, I'm going to start here on the right. I go over the middle strand so it becomes my new middle strand, and then I move the old middle strand out to the right. Then I go over from the left side over the middle strand, move the middle strand out to the left, and you just keep alternating. Right to the middle, left to the middle, and you're going to go all the way down. Now you can see, because I'm not securing this end, this is happening very loosely. I'm going to braid this off camera so I can make it tight, and then I'm going to secure the bottom with a strip of the green yarn, just like what's in the picture. Here are my finished braids. I think they turned out super, super cute. I did try to make sure I made them about the same length, so when they are sitting on either side of the head, it won't look abnormal or anything like that. I am so excited because my gnome is so super close to being finished. So just to show you the pieces, I have here the body, I have my 2 feet and my nose. If you did what I did and worked these pieces up and did not assemble as you go, the feet are a little bit larger than the nose. I have my 2 arms, and then of course my adorable little hat. So I am at the point now that I am ready to assemble, and what I'm going to actually start by doing is stuffing these pieces. And I don't want to stuff them so much that the crochet stitches pull apart. I want them to be firm, but not so overstuffed that it distorts the shape of the pieces. I have stuffed everything but the nose, and the nose is a great example of why I leave my crochet hook out. Now you'll notice I have the string from my chain hanging out. I'm going to talk about that when I finish up the object, but I have a little hack that I like to use that I think makes the finished product look really nice. So I'm going to put this here and use the blunt end of my crochet hook, or the hook end, it doesn't really matter, in my finger, and try to help me get this fiber fill down inside the nose. And it might take you a little bit because sometimes, like I'm struggling with right now, it just does not want to go and stay. So that is definitely why I recommend having a crochet hook on hand. But you're just going to use your hook to help you kind of get that fiber filled down in there. So I am alternating between my hook and just using my finger to help secure that fiber fill into place. There we go. Okay, so now all I have to do is stuff the hat, and then we'll be ready to assemble. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to sew on one of the pieces so you can see how I do it, and then I'm going to sew the rest of the pieces except for the hat on, and I'll come back and show you how to attach the braids last. I'm going to show you how I attach these by starting with the nose. So I'm going to go ahead and thread my yarn needle. You're going to define where the middle is when you do this first stitch. So I'm going to look for where the join is in the back. Now keep in mind the join kind of curves a little bit, so this doesn't have to be exactly at that point, but I'm going to make it about at that point. I am going to whip stitch, insert into the body, and then insert into the nose, and come out and go around. And that's going to just leave a nice little border of this nose colored yarn all the way around this piece. I'm going to be careful that I don't get that little end caught in anywhere. So into the body and out. And I am going to do one more stitch down here at the bottom just to make sure everything is secured in. The very last thing I'm going to do is one more stitch. I'm going to create a knot to secure this, and then I'm going to run it down inside my body and just make sure it's nice and secure. Now, the reason I leave these ends out is because sometimes when you stuff and sew on, you'll end up with a little yarn bump from when you first cast on. So when I finish sewing a piece on, I just take that piece of yarn and take my yarn needle and run it down through the middle of that piece. And I think that that just creates a much nicer looking finished end. So there you go. There's my nose sewn on. Now I'm at the point that I am ready to sew the braids onto the body. So you are going to sew the braids into the fiber fill, which if you've never done this before, this does sound a little bit different, but it does actually work. So I am going to thread my needle with white yarn. It doesn't really matter what color you use, but I'm just going to use white so it matches the braids. And then I'm going to put my braid where I want it to be. And I'm just going to go down and sew my braid into the fiber fill. So I'm not sewing it through the yarn. I'm literally just sewing it into the fiber fill to kind of put it in place where my fiber fill is. And because the fiber fill's this network of polyester, it will actually allow you to sew it in there. And then I'm just going to trim those ends off and sew the other side. Now, I would not pull on this tightly or anything. You're going to ultimately be sewing the hat on top just to secure it. I'm going to sew the other side and then I will show you how we are going to sew the hat on. Okay, so you can see here my two braids. They are about even, so I think that's a pretty good looking gnome right there, and I can adjust them slightly if I want to even them up a little. I am going to still need my yarn needle, but I don't need this white yarn anymore, so I'm going to move it off to the side. So the last thing I need to do is sew on the hat. If you look at the hat, you do create a little bit of a brim. So when I sew, I'm actually going to sew on the second and third rounds away from the edge so that I keep this cute little brim around my hat. Now there are a couple of things to note. You're going to be sewing around the pigtails, around the nose, and so I just kind of try to make stitches where I feel like I can and it still looks pretty cohesive. And I also am going to use the teal yarn. So you do have the tail from the hat and the tail from the body of the gnome, and you could theoretically use either one. I'm going to use the tail from the hat so that I don't create a gray stripe by accident through my hat. Now, typically when I would sew an amigurumi piece together, I would whip stitch, but here I'm actually going to mattress stitch. So I'm going to go into the body. And then I'm going to go into a stitch in the inside of the hat and then immediately back out. You can see I'm a couple stitches in from the edge like we talked about, and I'm just going to go around mattress stitching the hat just like that. And because I'm using the same color yarn as this bottom stripe, you can see that it's not really obvious where my stitches are. I'm going to skip stitches here and there. I don't feel like I have to do every single stitch, but I'm just going to check it every once in a while that my positioning is good and stitch it that way to the body. If you're like me and you stitched your nose right here at the top, that is nothing to worry about. You're just going to do one stitch on one side of the nose, pass the yarn through the hat, and then do another stitch on the other side of the nose. So you're not going to worry about stitching like through the nose or anything. It will be just fine. Just do one stitch on one side and then another stitch on the other side. I'm almost done. I'm more than halfway done. I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and then I will show you guys my finished gnome. I haven't finished Hook the Gnome for you right here. And I think Hook is so adorable, and I love the colors and the striped hat and the little pigtails. Such a cute, fun little project. And I hope that you found this tutorial helpful. If you find that you still have questions, definitely email us at help@askacrafter.com and we'll be able to assist you with any questions you have. Thank you so much for watching.